Georgetown Historical Society. We have refreshments over here if anyone's interested, if you want to get something before we get going. We also have our gift shop set up in the back of the room, so after the meeting we hope you will browse through some of those things, although I know you're going to want to be browsing the end stuff more, because it's more interesting. But just remember, Christmas is just around the corner, and books make good gifts, so buy something for the history buff in your family, please. We also have membership forms on the back table. If anyone here is not a member of the society and is interested in joining, please pick up a form. Or also, if you are a member and have not yet renewed your membership for 2014, you can also pick up a form. We're going to start with the 2013 year in review. We're going to briefly go over some of the high points of our year. And the biggest high point would be our foundation repair. I'm sure many of you have driven by the museum and saw it being all dug up and stones moved around and might have wondered what was going on. And I'm going to have the project manager, Rick Detweiler, speak briefly about our foundation project.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I'm going to keep this very brief because I promised not to encroach on Dan's time because he has a lot more to tell him than I do. And you will see also an article in the newsletter that's coming out probably in January sometime, we hope, that will include some photos of the places in the basement where people never go and they're usually not open for tours. But the foundation under the Brocklebank house was really in near danger of collapse. So we're relieved to tell you that we have a CPC grant that covered all of the expense of that project, which has just been completed. And now we're very well prepared to enter the next season with a sound footing underneath the Brocklebank Museum, which is really a real centerpiece for Georgetown history. So we hope you'll all be able to come and visit and see that in the coming weeks and months when the weather improves in the spring. Okay? Yeah, I didn't give much detail, but it'll be in the official accounts.
Rick has done a lot of work. We had to apply to the CPC and get it approved at town meeting. This was all funded through the Community Preservation Act. And I would like to thank Rick for all his work on the project.
Thank you. I should also say that Advantage Contracting and Stickney Masons, and there were electricians involved as well, also should be appreciated for the skill they exhibited. But the work they did, you'll see, is very good.
Absolutely. I'll just go month by month and give you just a brief overview of some of the things we did this year. We started out in February with a table at Business Night at Noonan's, which was done by the Georgetown Business Alliance. We were selling our merchandise there and encouraging people to join the society. In April, we had a table at the Kiwanis Breakfast, which attracts a very large crowd, and we sold quite a bit of merchandise, got a lot of donations, and some new memberships from that too. So that was very successful, and we look forward to doing that every year. In May, we had Bill Hallett from Newburyport give a talk here at the library on trains of the Civil War. Bill is a Civil War expert. He's with the Civil War Roundtable. Very interesting, and that talk drew a very big crowd. A lot of people were very interested in that. June 1st and 8th, we had cleanup days at the museum. And that leads up to our opening day and also our Pembroke tour. One of the highlights of our year is the third graders of Pembroke School come and tour the museum every year. We had 117 third graders along with their teachers and chaperones tour the museum. It's a lot of fun. Those who work it every year have a lot of fun. And I'd like to thank those who are our tour guides with the kids this year, and that is Beverly Knapp, Star Anderson, Terry Hart, Barry Crawford, Ed Desjardins, and as well as the late Steve Keene. So thank you to all of you that are here. Well, in fact, why don't you stand up? If you were one of the people that work as a tour guide, stand up and carry it back. I'm missing some of our people today, but it's a fun time. The kids are very enthusiastic about learning the local history, and our tour guides are very enthusiastic about teaching it. So we have a lot of fun doing that. June 23rd was the opening day for the museum. Now that it was all nice and clean with the kids there, after the kids came through rather. The Civil War exhibit, Georgetown in the Civil War, was in its 3rd year and still attracts a lot of attention, a lot of people coming through to check that out specifically. We will be running it one more year. This coming year, 2014, is the final year of Georgetown in the Civil War. So if you haven't seen it yet, please be sure you come this year, because then it's going to disappear and we're going to have a new exhibit. In September 21st, 22nd, 28th, and 29th, we had Georgetown Days and Trails and Sales. These are free open house days at the museum, so naturally, if you don't have to pay that big $5 admission, a lot more people are going to come. So we had, those 2 weekends, we had 103 people come through the museum on those days. So, and even though it was free, we got a lot of donations, also sold some merchandise. I think we passed out some applications, and I can't remember if anyone joined from that, but it was still a very successful weekend considering it's free, and it gets the word out. It's a regional thing, Trails and Sales, and it makes more people aware of our museum, so publicity is good. So we had a lot of fun with that. Let's see, on October 12th, Beverly Knapp invited us to her Georgetown High School class reunion. It was a multi-class reunion, actually, and she asked us to set up a table to sell merchandise. So, of course, 50th anniversary for some of those, and now a lot of people have moved away and such, and they like to get souvenirs of their old hometown. So we did very well selling merchandise at that, made some more money. And then in October, we had my cemetery tours. And that's my fun thing. On October 19th and 20th, I did a historical cemetery tour at Union Cemetery, talking about some of the more important people of Georgetown and their lives. And then on the October 28th and 29th, I had my Halloween cemetery tour. And that isn't about people who are extraordinary in life. It's about rather average people who had rather extraordinary deaths. I also have some ghost stories and a witch in there, and it's very more Halloween themed, and we have fun with that too. Well, I think Pam was, oh, no more dead kids. Pam was one of the ones that came along on this. This year, I was very happy that we were blessed with beautiful weather all 4 days of my tours. Last year, I got snowed out one of my days. This year, all 4 days were absolutely beautiful. I averaged about 20 people on each tour. Had a record-breaking year. We brought in 3 new members from the tour, also sold quite a bit of merchandise. So between the admission, the memberships, and the merchandise, I made $893 on those 2 weeks. That was very exciting. And finally, I'd like to thank everybody who has volunteered this year with Georgetown Historical Society, whether it's tour guides, manning tables, trails and sales. So everybody who has, and that includes board members too, so everybody who has volunteered sometime for GHS this year, could you please stand up and be acknowledged? And we have many more who have helped us and are not here this year, so, or this meeting, so thank you to all of them. We have also been actively involved in increasing our membership through a membership drive, for mailing out invitations to people. I'm happy to announce that this year we have brought in 24 new members, so that was also very good. So that's all the good stuff this year. Unfortunately, not everything was good this year. I'm going to hard on this. On July 14th, we lost our curator, Steve Keene. Do this. Steve was our curator and a member of GHS for many years. And if you came to the museum, you probably ran into him because he was there most every Sunday. Unlike some of my board members who do it because they feel they kind of have to, Steve went because he really enjoyed it. Yeah. Steve, even weekends when I had enough tour guides and said, you can take the Sunday off, Steve, he'd show up anyway because he just liked to do this. He had fun with it. Steve knew everything about everything in that museum. If you pointed to a chair and said, what kind of chair is that? He'll tell you. He'll also tell you who owned it. He will tell you the genealogy of that person who owned it. He knew everything about everything in the museum, and he loved to share his stories. If you came to the museum and got me as a tour guide, your tour would last probably about an hour. If you got Steve as a tour guide, it would last at least 2, because he had stories about everything. And if you showed any interest in anything, he will say, "Oh, funny story about that."
Yeah,
And he'd
yeah,
launch
yeah.
into it, and he just knew so much. He also did our database. At last count, he had over 8,000 items entered into our database, and he's just done such a tremendous amount of work with the society for all these years. So it was really a big, big loss, and we really miss him. But of course, we need a curator. So problem was, who's going to want to do that? Well, as it turned out, we had somebody in mind. We were very fortunate. There's a very nice young lady who had volunteered for GHS while she was in high school. And then she went off to college, and in the summer of 2011, she contacted us and said, "I'm looking for an internship. Can I work with you guys? As long as we don't have to pay you." and so Michelle was our summer intern, and she worked very closely with Steve particularly, got the curator's room, which is one of our storage rooms, got that all organized. She also was a big help in setting up our Civil War exhibit, which that was the year it opened. Did a great job, and we always love having her on because she's so sweet. And so she graduated in May from University of Miami, Ohio, with a degree in American Studies and Political Science. And when she got out, she said, "Well, I don't have a job yet, so can I come back and volunteer?" "Oh, yeah, no problem there." And we were very, very happy to have her back, and nobody was happier than Steve. Steve, he was very close to Michelle, very, very fond of Michelle. And so he was very happy to have her back and be working with her again. So when Steve passed, it seemed the obvious choice to take over as interim curator for 2013 was Steve's protege, Michelle Pryor. And she has agreed to go on the ballot and will be our curator for the official curator for 2014. So I would like to introduce Michelle and have her say a few words as our interim curator and curator.
Hello everyone. That summer 2011, I didn't quite expect to be here, or way back when I first started volunteering, thanks to Nora Cannon, who I see in the audience today. Hello, here I am, still here. I cannot say enough how much the Georgetown Historical Society has impacted my life. It's made me a more civically involved person and a better person all around. And Steve in particular is somebody who I've been very blessed to know, who has impacted my life and will impact my life forever, although we lost him this past summer. What was it? I was very fortunate to be volunteering the weekend before Steve passed with Chris. The three of us had a nice time at the museum, kind of a quiet day, and my job was to make sure that Steve took it easy, so I distracted him by nonetheless talking almost the whole time. Yes, it was really hot. But it was very serendipitous. We had a wonderful conversation about my recent graduation, moving home, kind of looking at the future. And he was just giving me all this great advice, and it was very, very serendipitous again. And something he said to me was that, "Michelle, education makes you aware of possibilities. That's what it does. You know, it's not the degree you have, but it's the awareness that it gives you." He said his mother had told him that. So I'm very glad that he was able to tell me that a couple days before he died, and something I'll carry with me. So as much as I wish I could write him an email and tell him how my new job is going, or how I'm doing as a curator, I can't. So the best I can do is to be here and be with all of you tonight. And as a curator support, so I don't get too upset, we've had some really great donations. This year we've had a really interesting ledger book come through, a beautiful China doll, which you should come check out and see when we reopen again this spring. And also we've had some really great pictures, including a photograph of Georgetown's very own Fred Tunney, baseball star. So we'll have some new pieces in the museum coming up in 2014.
I would now like to call on Barry Crawford, our treasurer, for the financial condition and treasurer's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Well, we had a good financial year, so there will be no crying from me. There is there's about 20 of these handouts back there. It's just a financial summary of the organization for this year. I will just give you a couple of highlights. I won't be reading all the numbers, but the most important thing to remember right now is that this year it looks like we will end the year in the black, which is great, and everybody should applaud. That's not been a common theme. There's a couple reasons for that, and I will go into that. Some income. We had memberships over 3,400. That's a 40% of our budget of revenue. So you can see how important memberships are, and that was an 18% increase over last year. So memberships was huge. Donations, 36% of our budget, and it was a 60% increase, although a lot of that was because of Steve King Memorial donations of over $2,000. You'll see a number on there of $1,876, and that is incorrect. We actually had $2,095, so almost $2,100 in Steve King donations. Book sales and museum tours. Museum tours was 50% over last year, because last year was terrible and this year was a record-setting year. So anyway, the moral of that story, that coming in the black, I'm showing 1,648 as a forecast in net income this year, and that is very good. And we really, really want to thank Chris, because her energy and her drive and her focus to continue every single week or every single month doing something that can help generate interest in memberships and the growth in those events has been really great. So that's the reason we're in the black, is because of Chris. So thank you very much, Chris. Overall, right now we have general checking. We have an amount of $13,000, and we would normally have more, but we liquidated a CD that was gaining no interest, and we're going to do some conservative investments in there and get some growth out of that money instead of taking a loss on our monthly. We'll try to generate some income from that money that we do have. And so we have $13,000 right now, but before this month is out, when we get recouped monies for that foundation project Rick was talking about, we should end up the year with about $48,000 in our checking account. So well more than half of that we're going to invest in some conservative investments and start generating some income. So those are some highlights. Our outside of the foundation repair, which was $52,000 out, $52,000 in to cover for all that, our general operating expenses this year, outside of that foundation, $8,475. That was revenue, and our expenses were $5,856, so almost $5,900. Let's just call it $6,000 is what it takes to run this organization, and we've been running in the red for the last several years. So the memberships being 40% of our overall budget. Please encourage you to take some of those membership forms and flyers. A little bit is a big difference in this organization. So we thank you for your interest in try to help promote it. And that's about all I have. So if you feel free to take one of those sheets when you're there. Thank you.
You're going to mention your Georgetown stickers for the cards?
There was one thing that I had forgotten to mention, and Barry was mentioning about the donations made in Steve's memory, and I do wish to thank Margie Keene. She's not here tonight, but she had asked that people who were interested in giving a memorial to donate to the society. So we really appreciate her doing that for us. And thank everybody who did donate. Donations are still trickling in, so if anyone didn't and still wishes to, we're still accepting them. I'd like to finish off by introducing George Comiskey, nominating committee. Ordinarily we have Ed Desjardins, the chairman of the nominating committee doing this, but Ed is away and is on his way home. He's probably up in an airplane right now, so we're going to have committee person George Comiskey giving the report of the nominating committee.
Okay, after meeting diligently for weeks, the nominating committee made up myself, Chairman Ed Desjardins, and Joan Crawford. Joanne Crawford. Nominate the following officers for a term of 1 year to expire December 31st, 2014. I ask you to stand when your name is called. President Christine Comiskey. First Vice President Terrence Hart. Second Vice President Sylvia Johnston. Karen Brockmike is not here. She's been nominated for Secretary. Treasurer Barry Crawford, and Curator Michelle Pryor. The committee also nominated Michael Hinchcliffe as Director for a 5-year term expiring on December 31st, 2018. The ballots were done by proxy and tallied, and I'm pleased to announce that all were unanimously elected.
Thank you. And thank you all. Wow, I'm president again. Okay, and that is it for our business meeting. And now I will introduce Dan Meader, our special guest for this evening. Dan is, he's a true townie. Dan is, let's see, 11th generation from this area. His ancestors go back to some of the earliest settlers. And fortunately, some of those people collected some great artifacts of Georgetown. As you can see, Dan has an amazing display set up here for us, and he's going to talk a little bit about it. And we are grateful that we have kind of a second museum in town that we call Dan, because he's got so many great things. So I know you're all here because you'd rather hear Dan than me. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan, as seen on TV. You've probably seen him popping up with the Kennedy auction earlier this year and the very recent Kennedy and Hollywood Legends auction. And you may have seen him on the reality show Dig Fellas, where he is master authenticator. Yeah, you're it. So without me talking anymore, I introduce to you Georgetown's own Dan Meader.
Well, I don't know why you feel like this is a daunting task. This is like a backdrop. This is just a small selection of stuff that I just threw together. It's not the most artistic display, but I put it together in an hour, and truly, this is small. I have, basically through my family, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of photographs and different objects and that kind of thing. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I obviously grew up in Georgetown. I'm 11th generation on my mother's side of the family to live in town. My father's side, I'm 5th generation, so they're newbies. But on my mother's side of the family, they were actually here in Cambridgeport in 1637. And then when Ezekiel Rogers was coming to start Rowley, which is where we are now, they met up with each other. My first ancestor was from Rowley, England, and he was friends with Ezekiel, and he became one of the original settlers. I can tell you that I'm basically 11th generation to live in this town. Starting with Rowley, then the West Parish of Rowley, and Georgetown. I'll show you this. I'll pass this around. This is about the earliest thing that I brought that relates to my family. This is. I'll pass one around on each side, I guess. It's both sides. And if you have your reading glasses, not that I expect you to really read the whole thing, but it just gives you an idea. This is from my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. This is his will, and he wrote this in 1654. So I don't think there's much earlier than that for Georgetown.
Mile, right?
Yeah. Well, some people call Milo to McGill. It's M-I-G-H-I-L-L. He died in 1654. He was my. It's interesting because it does, the Spofford's in town, if people know, they get the credit for being the first real people that lived here. Well, they built their house a little bit later than when my family was here, but they do get the credit that they were the first time full-time residents here. My family basically kept their animals over here at the pen. Pembroke School, there was a brook, and that's my family had the pens for the animals. That's where they kept them. So they lived over on Weatherseafield Street in Rowley, and they kept their animals over here. As time went on, they owned a lot of property throughout the town, and there was a number of children. My direct descent family member actually built the Baldpate. You're familiar with the Baldpate Inn? He built that in 1733. So the McGills or Miles, however you want to say it, they owned that side of Baldpate Hill, and on the other side of the hill were the Tidds. And the Tidds on the other side of the street. And they built If you're familiar with Dr. Shapiro's house up there on Ballpate Road, Samuel Tidd built that house. So what happened was Samuel Tidd came to Georgetown, and he married Ruthie McGill Amaya. So that's how that connection goes. So my mother's maiden name was Tidd. I know this is a long story, but the Tidds are more prevalent in town. You hear that name, there's no more Miles left in Georgetown. But the Tidds are all over the place, or at least they were. But my mother was a Tidd. So that's how I came down on that side of the family. On the other side of the family, this was the first meter to come to Georgetown, and she actually married Captain Gilman Purley, who lived over in this house right here, which is at the corner of Pembroke, where Pembroke School is. That's the house where the Dispenzas, Mr. Dispenza lives now. My family owned that for generations, and that's the painting that my great-grandfather painted, that painting. This is my great-great-grandmother. This was painted by Matthew Pryor, who was a very famous painter. This is my family out in front of the house. Our family called it the homestead. So that's the meter side of the family. I'm 5th generation on that side. And that's basically where I got my collecting from, basically. My father was Albert Meter, and he was way ahead of his time. He was born in 1910. And back when he was a kid, if he was gone missing, he wasn't out getting in trouble or any of that stuff. He was in the little old ladies' houses in town. He knew where every library was. He obviously he was a trustee here for many, many years back in the 40s and early 50s. But he knew where all the books were located. He loved to read. So he would go to all the little old ladies' houses in town, and he'd send his mother would send out all the brothers, go to so-and-so's house, or find Elvie. So he'd be there. Well, this was back in the 1920s, all right? This stuff at this time wasn't really that old, a lot of it. And they didn't have any use for it. They didn't want it. He collected it. He saved these things, and there was no historical society or anything like that. It was him. So he just collected all this stuff and kept amassing it, and that's really the basis of the collection. We have a lot of things on both sides of the family that have been passed down through generations that we've kept. Obviously, some of these things. But there were different people in town that really took a liking to my father, and they just felt like this stuff needed to be saved, and that's what he would do. He would take it and he would preserve it, and he appreciated it. Other kids, all of these pictures that you see over there, those are all glass plate negatives that those prints come from. The other kids, the house is right around the corner, right on East Main Street. They'd be loaded. The basements would be full of glass plate negatives. The other kids would line them up along the ledge, and they'd be throwing rocks and busting them on my father. No! So he'd take them and he'd rescue all that he could. So I have hundreds, if not thousands, of glass plate negatives of Georgetown that my father had the keen sense to save. It's not like the digital technology of today where a lot of stuff just gets deleted. You have actually every picture, whether for good or for bad. Now, today everybody deletes things. And sometimes they want the most premier picture. They want the one that you just look perfect in. But it doesn't tell the whole story. And I think that's what we're going to be losing today. And I think a lot of this shows that even if it's a flawed photograph, you see detail that you don't normally see because of what they've done. They've taken this picture, and it shows something that shows the context of what it was all about and why it's more important than the pretty picture. So a lot of these pictures, they might not be the best quality, but for each their own purpose, they serve a real part of history that we don't normally see. So anyway, I brought a little bit of a display. I have way more than this. This was just easy. I've been going through a lot of things lately. I've had a lot of different activities. So my head is a little full right this minute. I'm actually working at the Hilltop Steakhouse. We're going to be auctioning off the contents of that next week. So I just left there, came here, threw this stuff together real quick, and tried to tell a little story here. What I have back here, I'll just go over a few things, and then if there's some questions, I'll be happy to answer them for anything. But Georgetown, it's people think because we're here today, this was the biggest it ever was, this was the best that it ever was. It went through peaks and valleys. When you think about when my ancestor, when she came to Georgetown and married Captain Purley, that was in the 1870s. 1870s in Georgetown was a huge time. Georgetown was really building leaps and bounds. It was way bigger than Raleigh was. I mean, we had the factories going up, Little's Block, the churches, 1874 when the Congregational Church, all these big everything was really happening in Georgetown. People were moving in droves. So we've had some peaks and valleys. This is like an example of a photographer's studio. See these pictures right here? These are all Georgetowners. All right? These are real Georgetowners. And These were all taken at Harriman's studio, which is where the Village Pizza Shop is today. So if you see the Village, this is actually an ambrotype of the ambrotype studio. It's in poor condition, but this is the earliest form of photography that was done in Georgetown. The earliest form of photography was daguerreotypes. Daguerreotypes were not taken in Georgetown. I've never seen a daguerreotype of an outside building. You'll find people that there are daguerreotypes of because they had them taken somewhere else. But in Georgetown, the earliest form of photography was ambrotypes. He quickly changed over, I wouldn't say quickly, but after a few years, he was very prevalent in the stereotyping business. I don't think one thing I didn't bring was my stereotypes, stereoptic and views. But all of these pictures that you see right here would have been hanging on the walls when you walked in. So these would be examples of your relatives. I can do, it was probably 6 for a quarter or something like that. He'll do up a whole bunch of them for you. So this is just an example of some of the people. Some of them are named, some I don't know, some I do know. Not personally. But that's the earliest form of photography. So it's a very, arduous process to take photography outdoors. So it's extremely rare to even have an ambrotype like this. There's not many ambrotypes of Georgetown. This particular one right here, this is a beautiful gutta percha style case. But this is a half-plate daguerreotype, ambrotype of, take a wild guess. You can kind of see it. It's in Georgetown, and you live right next door to it. Settlers Antique Village. This is Settlers. This was Daniel Moulton's house. He built it. He added the third stories afterwards. But this was, I think this is 1860 when this one was done. So they're very time-consuming to be able to take an outdoor photograph. You'll find people because you can sit in the studio and do that. The outdoor scenes, you don't see that many. This is Little's Barn. Everybody knows Little's Hill up on Andover Street, where St. Mary's is. This is the big barn. This was an octagonal barn. There was a massive fire. It was built in 1855. I think the fire was in 1885. It lasted about 30 years. It was a monumental barn. It had all kinds of animals in there. They stored hay and everything else, and they said that you could see forever when you were up in the cupola up there on the top. That was a spectacular barn. Some of the other things that I brought here, we're here at the library. This is the Library Street. Well, there's no library on Library Street. Well, this is the library that was on Library Street. This is the cornerstone. This was a time capsule for the Peabody Library. And later on, if you want to look, all over on the floor over there, that's all related to George Peabody. And he was the money behind this library. This is the cornerstone. And if you look inside, I'll bend it open a little. It was all the newspapers of the day when that was built. And it was soaking sopping wet when they were tearing it down. My father was there, and he used to work in there. They used to show silent films, and he used to check the people in at the door, and then let all his buddies go in the back door for free. But he used to work there when he was a kid. And then they tore it down, and he grabbed it. It was soaking sopping wet. That was all built on a bog. It was a terrible place for a library. But that was soaking wet, so those are all ruined. This particular one here, this larger one, this is another cornerstone. And again, this was all thanks to George Peabody. This is the memorial church that was in honor of his mother. Over where the parking lot is, over on East Main Street. This is the cornerstone from that one. This one I have not opened, but you can hear that it's pretty dilapidated. This one was soaking wet as well. So those are kind of unique things as well. This actual, wherever I put it, this is actually a piece of the bell. In that church, there was a big fire there in 1923, and this is the bell shattered, the big bronze bell, and that's a little piece of it right there. Everybody needs one. That was my father, though. He was right there. He would go to these things. He would take it. He'd keep it. I have, especially we lived across the street from the Congregational Church. Any piece of the slate that fell off that had any decoration, I have a whole stack of them. It's like that. He just loved any type of history, no matter what it was. He hated to see destruction, but that was part of life, and you'd see these things, and he would take them and preserve them. What we have right here, this is the first generation of the doctors in town. There were 3 generations of Dr. Roots in Georgetown. They started down in the Byfield Parish, and this was Dr. Martin Root. There was Martin, Richmond, and Raymond was the last one. This is Martin. M.R. is Martin Root. This was the bag that he would carry around with him if you were sick. My ancestors would have gotten healed by this, or tortured. So if you had a tooth problem, this is an extractor. I don't know. I don't know, but these are the actual tools. This is his actual kit. This was dated about 1820. I have his sleigh as well. I have Dr. Rude's sleigh. I was going to bring that, but it was a little hard. But it's really, that's a time capsule in itself. Georgetown is also known, a lot of people when they hear you from Georgetown, they knew about the drive-in theater that we had, and they also knew that we made bottles here. We had jaundice bitters that were produced here. A lot of people, especially on this TV show that I'm on, they all talk about bottles and digging and all that kind of stuff. Oh, I heard Georgetown, I get these bottles. It's like, this is Atwood's. It was Moses Atwood, and then Moses Carter took over afterwards. But I know you have some of these over at the museum and all that. I mean, they're pretty prevalent in this area. But it's very difficult to find them with the actual labels on them. And I have quite a number that have the labels that my father was smart enough to grab here and there. I also brought a little selection of other bottles that, some of the Pearlies, the Batemans, there were other people in town, and Carters, and they all have the paper labels on them. Some of them are spectacular. I mean, you don't find them that often, but, there's you don't see a Carter's bottle like that too often. There is one real rare Atwood's Bitter bottle, and I forget what color it is. I think it's yellow, and there's only like 1 or 2 known, and that one actually is worth money. Most of them aren't worth 10 cents, but I do have some early ones. This is one of the earliest ones that I have. This has got the early Pontal on the bottom. Most of them that you get are all later. They're much, much later. And there was a big lawsuit that went on in I don't want to talk about Atwood's Bitters too much, but there's a big lawsuit that went on in the Carters. There was a lot of stuff going on. I actually have Moses Carter's desk as well. My father, they lived in where the judges, I don't know who lives there now, but right in front of Pearly School, the house on the corner, the judges used to live there. Their barn burnt down a couple of years ago. That was the Carter's house. And my father was friends with she was old back then, she was probably 100 to my father, but she was probably 80 or 70 or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, he paid 25 cents a week for the desk. So he went over and made an installment. It was $3. And he paid 25 cents a week back when he was a kid. He just loved this desk. I still have it today. I got the bug when I was a little kid. I was a collector. My father, brought me around to all the antique shops in the flea markets and all that kind of stuff in the 60s. And I actually set up my first flea market in Georgetown. George Hills, who was a member of the society, used to run the Legion flea market on Sundays down at where the Knights of Columbus, named after my uncle, Frank Meader. That was the Legion, and they used to hold a flea market there on Sundays. And starting when I was 5 years old, I used to set up there once a year with my own table. I can tell you exactly what I had, what I got for it, where I got it, the whole thing. And I stayed with that my whole life. I helped the settlers in 1977. They had a shop down where King Davis used to have the Oddfellows in the square. They had a shop in there, and then they bought Rona's Furniture Building, which is where they are, settlers, right next to you. And I helped them move in there in 1977, and I worked for them for about 15 years or so. And really kind of apprenticed and did a lot of research and looked up things, and to the point where now people actually believe me when I talk. But I study a lot of different things, and I try to know a little bit about a lot of things. It's very difficult because in the antiques world and history, even in Georgetown, when you think about the different eras, my father didn't look at it as though one particular period was history. History is yesterday. I mean, you talk about these, they just tore down a house down on North Street. So it's like all these different factions of life, my father would keep and collect. I have basically, from every era that since my father in the 20s, all the way up, every single era, every decade of whatever was going on in town, he saved it. If the Kiwanis was having their pancake festival, he had to save one of the things. And he usually saved 2, because he had to have one that he could look at, one to keep for good. So he had saved everything like that. He saved every newspaper in town that you can imagine. Not everybody knows about the ones that we have today, but everybody knows about the Advocate. But there was the Watchtower. There were all these other newspapers. He has copies of every single thing. He was a little fanatical. But I'm a little bit the same. I can't help it. I want to learn whatever I can about something, and that's why all this stuff. It's not the prettiest display in the world, but each thing has its own story. And when you look at the different things that did happen in Georgetown, I mean, we had celebrations. These are from the 1850s. these are the fantastical celebrations. I'll pass them around. These are fantastical. These are the 4th of July. They started at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and they celebrated all day long for 4th of July. I mean, when you read these things and you see the crowds that they had, Georgetown had a lot of stuff going on, and people came here. You know, it's just like, you know, it's like today everybody has a second home. They all go to camp wherever they go, and the town is empty in the summertime. Back then, people actually came here. You know, this was like, you wanted to be here. You know, you had the ponds and all that stuff, and you had these things going on. There were societies for everything in town. This one right here, this is from the 1837. This is, and it actually says Georgetown right on there. Record of the Young Men's Anti-Slavery Society, Georgetown. These are the records of the minutes, basically, of the meetings. You know, and this is, you know, they were ahead of their time. They had a lot of things going. They had musical. I have a number of different musical organizations. There were fraternal organizations, not just the Masons and Oddfellows, but there was the AJC. There was a number of different things that, in music especially, you know, they had the brass band. They had this one. They had about 4 or 5 others that I have the minutes for. And everybody had something to do. It wasn't, you know, today with the computer and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't that you just sat home and did nothing. They found something to do. They made up these organizations. The fire department did their own thing. I mean, they had their own lives, you know, and that's what I think Georgetown's all about. When you look at these pictures, you know, and you see these people, all of these people, you know, made something out of their town. They appreciated what they had here. They wanted to be here for the most part. And like you said, your daughter doesn't really like Georgetown. But, you know, it's like, you know, when you really think about it and you come back, you know, you see a lot of people that leave and they come back and it's like they appreciate, you know, they don't like to see the changes and stuff. But, you know, it's not new. This has been going on for generation after generation after generation. You know, I hear a lot of people, sometimes they'll talk, oh, well, you got to do this and you got to do that because you got, it's like, and they say, don't you want Georgetown to be a good town? Don't you want it to be a good town? It's like, you don't know who you're talking to. It's like, you know, it's always been a good town. It changes. There's ups and downs, and you know, it's gone through good times and bad times, but each generation found its own happiness and its own way to get along. And there's a lot of fighting in every generation, in town politics and everything else, but I can just keep talking forever, so I'll shut up. But this right here, this is another, like I just talked about the ball pate that my family had built that. This, actually, I'll show you. This is the earliest picture that I have of the ball pate. This was when it was just a house. If you go up to the ball pate sometime, not as a, well, as a gift, maybe, that's, you can still see the remains of the main structure of the garrison. Well, it's not a garrison, but the colonial house that we have there. That's the earliest picture that I have of that, before they started putting all the additions on. This album is loaded with pictures of the ball pate. I have one whole album over here, if you're interested in the ball pate, of just the, those are all postcards of the inside and everything else. But this is Dr. Bray, who was the head of ball pate for years. This was the mailbag. So this is, it says ball pate in right on there, and William Bray. And he was a selectman in town. He was the head of the ball pate. But this is actually that every day, you know, they had the horses and buggies go up until they built the depot down there at South Georgetown, and that's where actually, right there, that's one of the lanterns from one of the depots. I actually can't say that it's definitely from the South Georgetown depot, but I bought that off of Shrimp Kinson probably 35 years ago. His family, the Reeds, actually ran those places, the depots, and this was one of the original. You'll see pictures of it over there, but I bought that when I was a kid off of Shrimp Kinson. I've been doing this for a long time, so it's not, this collection never really stops. I just got something about 2 weeks ago. I just got something else. I just got another little sampler, and I got some other things that people know that this is what I do, and it's, you know, it's something that I have always done, and I still find stuff. It's still out there, just like you do at the museum. I mean, people bring you stuff all the time. And as a matter of fact, I have been on the board at the Haverhill Historical Society, the Buttonwoods Museum, for 20-something years. I was president over there for 10 years myself. So I have a museum background. I have the buying and selling part. You know, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest for me with the Georgetown Historical Society because I collect this stuff. So to be on the board and do those things, you know, that's a no-no. You know, so it would be difficult. I've been asked before to be a part of this, but it's very difficult because you know, my family has collected this stuff for so long, and I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna do with it. I don't have any kids, so I'll figure it out someday. There's some little stories about my father in the historical society I don't want to get into. If he knew I was here right now, I don't know how happy he'd be. That's another story. Huh?
Do you have a database, all of our?
No, I don't have a database. I know basically what I have.
Would be like a couple
Yeah,
thousand
but it's in my head. Oh, no. No,
More or less?
no, wait.
Way more
Wait,
than
yeah. No, just the pictures alone, yeah. And then I have the negatives for them, and I have case after case after case of paperwork. You know, it's ephemera from every, like I said, from every generation. So no matter what it was, if it was something going on in town, he made sure that he got one. All right, he just had to have one to save for us because he said, "Who else is going to do it?" So that's just how he was. So he saved everything. So it's like people ask me for a lot of information, and I do. I just happen to have it because he saved it all. But so anyway, like I said, this is my great-great-grandmother. This is after they put the addition on. I showed you the ambrotype of the Harriman studio here. It was more than just an ambrotype studio. They sold herbs and botanicals and all that kind of stuff. They were relations of Olive Metcalf and Robert Metcalf, the attorney. They lived across the street. But that's the front as you know it today, sort of. I mean, you can see the front of the building. This was really the front behind it. They added on the whole front of the house. So that's how, this is really the front. That's Central Street right there. So it's kind of funny how they put the whole thing together. Let's see, these are some, I have thousands of deeds of Georgetown, and these are some of the earliest ones that I have here. These are, you know, a lot of 18th century, 19th century, but there's a tremendous amount of 18th century. If you have time, you can gander through some of them. You'll see a lot of, you'll see, the Brocklebanks, you'll see John Spofford, you'll see, everybody is in here. Anybody that you can think of back in the day. Georgetown had a lot of different businesses that really happened here. Among them, of course, is the shoe industry, and South Georgetown was very prevalent. It was called Chaplainville for the most part of it over there. This is an unusual picture. I actually got this off of Shrimpkinson too. This was, the old fire station that somebody's redoing right now, the Washington No. 3. I cleaned that out probably 35 years ago or something. I found this on the wall in there, sitting there. I was so excited. My father had never seen it before. So it was hard for me to find something my father had never found, So I was like so happy. But this is Chaplainville. This is really a nice picture. This is where the Gordons live right there. And then if you look, this is where this barn and the house. That's where the Baldpate. That's where I think they were a member of your board too. She just moved to Florida or something. Yeah. That's their house right there. That's all gone. Yeah, Christensen's. But that's South Georgetown, Chaplainville. This is Chaplainville as well. Actually, there's their house right here. So that's a comparison. That's the barn when it was still there. And there's the house. You can pass those.
There's a great photo of this in the Historic New England collection with the whole family in front
Oh,
of
yeah.
So,
She sent me that.
it's amazing.
Yeah, because I sent her that one and she sent me the other one. Let's see what else I have here. This, a lot of these are self-explanatory. I just brought it for the fun of it. This is the only known photograph of John Perley, who actually gave the funds for Perley School. I let them use this in the Arcadia book, but that's the only known picture of John Perley. He's the one that has the big monument over at Harmony Cemetery. These are all pictures of downtown just through the years. This book here, before, on the Meader side of the family, this is Susan. This was her husband, wrote this book. This is, if you've seen this one around, this is called the Merrimack River, its source and its tributaries. And this was written by my great-great-grandfather. I have all the scrapbooks and all the water books for it and everything else. It was quite a good book. That was her first husband. Now this is my great-great-grandfather wrote that. Not that it has much to do with Georgetown other than the fact that she came here. But let's see. This here, I have a number of blueprints. This particular one right here, this is the Congregational Church. It shows all of the different levels. I gotta be careful with this. It shows all the elevations, and I'll show you just a couple here.
Who built it? Who designed it?
It is Peabody and Stearns for the architects. And this is the front elevation of the Congregational Church. Isn't that something? That was going to be discarded, and my father said, I don't think so. But this is a treasure. I have the Little's block, the old Little's block that burnt down in 1923. I have that one as well. Those lands, that was built in 1870. Again, this was a big resurgence in Georgetown, with a lot of people moving into town. So I don't know what else I can tell you other than I could just have you come up and take a look around, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I have brought some selections of postcards, and you know, I have hundreds and hundreds of Georgetown postcards, and you think, well, how could there be hundreds and hundreds of them? Well, they were taken through the different eras, and they take them from every slight different angle, or it'll have a different color background. So I have basically every, you know, if it's Pearly School, you think, oh, well, I already have this one. Well, you don't have it in red, and you don't have the print over here, and you don't have Bateman's name over here. You have, you know, somebody else's over here. Andrews did that one. So, you know, you got to, when you collect stuff like the way my family does, they try to have something that, you know, you can show every aspect of it. So you might think that they're repeats sometimes, but they're not. So anyway, I think if you take a look around, you'll see that some of these photographs over here, this will show you the different things that were happening in town, whether it was the incoming of the advent of the streetcars, whether it's the fire departments, the different churches, all the different things that were in town. They're all put together in categories. There's a little bit of a lot of things, and if you're from town, your relatives are probably in some of these pictures, or they could be the homes that you live in right now. The other thing that I brought too, I don't know if I mentioned, I have hundreds and hundreds of deeds. There's those, the early ones. These are some that are later over here too, and some of your homes are probably in those as well. I just brought a small selection, but I think that's basically all I can really tell you. You have a question?
Actually, I do, Dan. I don't want you to run away and let everybody jump up there first, because you are now a very famous celebrity in town.
Oh yeah.
You were on Dig Fellows. You are the gentleman who put together the Kennedy auction. Can you give us 5 minutes on each?
Well,
on what you were doing?
My life is very, very, very busy. I've had some great times in my life, and I've had some bad times in my life. All have ups and downs. Right now, in my own personal life, I have, you know, I used to buy and sell things. That's what I used to do. I went to school for engineering. I hated it. Got my Bachelor of Science degree, and I was offered a full-time job when I graduated from college, and I said, if I take this, I'm going to be there till I die, and I'm going to be the most unhappy person in the world. I'm thinking the whole time, I could be finishing a piece of furniture, making more money than they're paying me for an hour. You know, so it's, I had to do it on my own. So I've always been a kind of an entrepreneur. I've always tried to make my own money. So anyway, I've done antiques my whole life, and then I opened the general store for a while, see how that would go, you know, because antiques have, you know, basically have a bad connotation right now in the retail market. People want to go to Jordan's Furniture, wherever it is, and buy something that doesn't have scratch, all that kind of stuff, and they'd rather pay for a piece of junk than have something that's going to last for generations. But so be it. So antiques market has, if you've noticed, most of the antique shops have all closed up. You know, if you go into Settlers, they have antiques in there, but they also have to sell other things too to keep going. You know, you have to have what people want. So what I've done now is I'm working with a friend of mine that we've been friends. We both started around the same time. We've known each other since we were about 15. And I've been buddies with him for a long time. And I do, basically, I go around the country. I get calls that people have different collections, whatever it might be, and I amass these things and I put it together and we make an auction out of it. So they just mentioned the Kennedy auction that I had. It was really the Dave Powers collection. Dave Powers was the best friend and assistant of President Kennedy. He was friends with him from 1946 till he passed away. He was in the Secret Service car behind him. His son called us up. We went over there, and they had all the big auction houses, everybody in the world there. And they're all looking at it. They're all buying for it. They all wanted a piece of it. And basically, it turned out, you know, I'm dealing with Dave Powers' son, and he could see my passion and the way I operate and how I love what I do. And he gave us the collection to market for him. So we put together this auction that turned into kind of a phenomenon, and it got worldwide attention, and we broke all kinds of records in a lot of different ways, and it was really quite spectacular. I worked about 7 months on that auction, putting it together, and it was really an honor for me. You know, being from Massachusetts, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican or whatever, I'm from Massachusetts, and this was a hometown guy, and he's, you know, either you like him or you don't, but so what? Yeah, he was our president. And, you know, we found 50 years after the fact that there was quite a market for that. And that the people were there, they were interested, and they were paying crazy prices, really. I mean, you know, when you think about it, you know, I sold the bomber jacket for $665,000. Now, it was worth about $200. You know, so, you know, I mean, if you want, you can buy them for $200, but this particular one happened to belong to the president, and because of the provenance, that's what's key to what I do. You know, things have, if you have a bureau and it's yours, you know, great. You know, it's worth $150 just because it's worth $150. But if it belongs to a specific person or an entity or something that gives it this background, that's where the real money is, because then it's not an average thing. So then it becomes an unknown. What is somebody really going to pay? I had the guy, when we were selling the bomber jacket, it took 17.5 minutes to sell, which I believe broke a record for the longest item. I mean, all the antique publications have been doing studies and everything else, and they haven't found anything that took that long to sell. And it was an arduous task. I had the guy on the phone that ended up buying it. And it was we had a bank of 10 phones that were on it. We had the crowds on the computer, and we had the crowds in the audience. So everybody was after it, and they were all at a certain level. Well, I had the guy on the phone. He didn't know he was going to pay $665,000 for this jacket. He had no idea, you know. He's bidding. He's like, okay. And then finally got to the point where, you know, we have a buyer's premium when we do an auction. And so the base price on it, the hammer price, was $570,000 at this point. And the other phone had the bid. It was $560,000. They were looking for $570,000. And I said to the guy on the phone, I said, you know, all the cameras are on, were on the other phone. Now they're all looking at me. And he's not there. He's out with his family eating at a restaurant. They don't even know what he's doing. All right? They don't. They didn't know it. And he's on the phone. And I said, all the cameras are looking at you right now. Do you want to pay $570,000? And he's like, oh, go ahead. That turned out to be the high bid, and he got it. And you know, he's thrilled. I mean, they're absolutely thrilled. It's a person, I can't tell you who it is. It went to the most expensive address in Manhattan. I can tell you that much. It'll probably be on display at some point. But that's the kind of things that happens in your life sometimes, you know, and you just don't know what it's going to be. And because of that auction, people think I got this television show. Well, that's got nothing to do with it. They had heard about what I do, and they had auditioned me through Skype. So during the time where I was frantic getting ready for the Dave Powers Kennedy auction, I got these phone calls from Hollywood, and they said, I want you to come, and I mean, we want to do an audition with you. You know, we heard about what you do, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is crazy. You know, I'm in Georgetown, Massachusetts. Who the heck knows anything about me? And, you know, it's like I'm not I know I'm weird, but I'm not that weird. So anyway, I had never Skyped before in my life. They said, we're going to Skype, you know, we want to watch you. We're going to do this audition. And so I'm in the gallery at this point, and I had all this Kennedy stuff all around me. And I'm sitting there, and they started asking me these questions. And then they said, would you describe this thing to me? So I pick up and talk about this thing, you know, whatever it was, and then tell them all about it and why, and talk about provenance that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago. So I'd show them this you know, part of what I do. And they had already auditioned John McGinnis, who's the guy that I work with. They had already auditioned him, but they only talked to him about one thing, and that was it. And then they kept asking me, and they said, well, would you pick up something else and try that, and try this, and try that? And then we need headshots, and we need this, and we need that. And then I'm so busy, I put it all out of my head. All right, I didn't think anything of it. This was before Thanksgiving, and a year ago. And then they started hounding me. And they're like, well, we've narrowed it down to 4, and you're one of the 4. And I'm like, I'm so busy. I said, I really can't do it. You know, I said, I have too much going on. Because the big President's auction that I had was on President's Day coming up. So they're like, look, all of us chose you. Every single one of the producers, the studio, everybody chose you. I'm just saying 4 people, but it's really you. I said, well, if you want me, I can't come till after this presidential auction. And at this point, they could see I was all over TV. I was everywhere in the world. I was on every kind of media. And but they had already decided that they wanted me to do this thing. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I flew out 2 days after the auction, flew out to Hollywood, and they wined and dined me, and they had me do this program, and they're trying to give me my own show. They have 2 different concepts for me for my own show. We're finding out about if the show that I'm already on is going to be renewed or not. I don't know. I know it's not going to be on the Travel Channel. That's what I'm on right now. I have a contract for 3 years. They're trying to break my contract. They want me to be on like the History Channel or something like that. So anyway, we'll see what happens. They have 2 different concepts for me, and then another production company has hounded me that they want me to forget about. So it's nice to be wanted, and it'll probably all amount to a hill of beans, but you know, it's an honor. It's been quite a ride, and what I'm going to get to right now is, like I said, I flew out to Hollywood 2 days after that presidential election. Basically right now, what I'm doing right here, right this minute, my head is 15 different places because of all the things I have going on. And that's how I was when I was out in California. I had just had this major auction. The press is still hounding me. They want all the facts and everything else. And I'm 3 hours behind everything. You know, I'm in California, and I'm wicked busy. You know, I have a lot going on up there. Well, I get this email, and it is a 310 area code, and I know that's the LA area. So I said, well, I had a couple of minutes in between times, so I said, I'm going to call this number. It said that he had some stuff that was related to President Kennedy, and it was from one of his relatives. So I called this guy. He was 15 minutes from my hotel. I was in Culver City. He lives in Venice Beach. And I had never been to Hollywood before. I didn't know anything about that area. So he says, I can drive right over there and show you a little snippet of what I had. Well, it turned out that this guy was a big hotshot Hollywood producer, and his father was even a bigger one. He was a Hollywood mogul, and he represented all kinds of people from Count Basie to all period people of the day, Elizabeth Montgomery. But his big claim to fame was Peter Lawford, who was the brother-in-law of the president. So I go out there. The guy liked the way I handled the Dave Powers collection. He knew right away that I was his guy. We worked, signed the contract. I flew back out there 2 weeks later, stayed 5 days at the guy's house going through this stuff, and brought back this massive collection of Hollywood memorabilia that pertained to the Kennedys. And that was the basis for this last auction that I just had a couple of weeks ago. And that one we called the Legends because it encompassed much, much more than the president himself. It was people, all of his contemporaries. So that one, I traveled the country 3 times, and I got to meet the most interesting people. That for me anyway, and what I do, you know, I love to, I want to know everything. I go home at night and I'm on the computer and I use 2 fingers, and I'm just going, you know, researching constantly. You know, if my father was alive and he had the computer, he would probably be, you know, a crazy person. But he, you know, you can find out so much. You know, you can believe what you want and believe, you know, figure out what you can't really believe. But there's a lot of information out there. So I see all this stuff, and I learn, and I get to meet these people that were so connected, and you realize that these things that we call legends, these are real people. And for me, that was the most interesting part of it, because I could see the personal back. The guy that I'm dealing with out there was friends with Marilyn Monroe. All right, he was literally friends with Marilyn Monroe. His first drink came from President Kennedy. All right, he's president. They're having a party. The president, it was called a bull shot. Okay, and that's the drink, and he wasn't even of age yet. And he said, "Here, try this. It's really good." He became an alcoholic for 35 years. True story. But you know, these are the stories that I get to hear, and I met, you know, for me with this particular auction, this genre of auctions with the historical element of the president, I've met so many people that were interns within the White House, and that the next generation. He had another very close friend that was Lem Billings. He went to Choate with him. His niece called me up out of the blue. Now, Lem Billings died in 1981. I knew all about him, but I figured that stuff was long gone. His niece inherited everything with Bobby Kennedy Jr. So she had me go down. She was down in Rhode Island. I go down to her house, and the stuff was just amazing. You know, I mean, and it's not the money. You know, it becomes a burden sometimes. You know, it's like this stuff here is a burden. You know, and you look at it, and you know, when you're in a museum environment, that's your goal. You're supposed to protect, preserve, and interpret these things and educate people. And you know, you have these things, and it's like, when do you really, you know, what is your responsibility? And so for these people, they didn't realize really what they had. This is their everyday life. They take it for granted. It's not like us looking at it from the outside and saying, oh, you know, it's like, oh, they have all these pens that belong to the president. It's like, oh yeah, they're just sitting there. You know, it's just like everyday stuff. So, you know, a lot of these people, like I said, it's not about the money. A lot of them are extremely wealthy, but it becomes a burden, and they decide, you know, that now is the time. It's like, you know, what am I really going to do with this? My kids are not going to want it. You know, if you donate it to the For example, I'm not talking about a small historical society, but I know how we are. We have to be very careful at the buttonwoods of what we accept, because it is a liability. And does it meet your mission? You know, you have to think about it. It's like, do I already have 15 of these? Do I really need this one? You only take it if it's in better condition. That's the way we would look at it. But you know, you look at these things, you look at the people, and it's, you know, I keep talking, so I probably should shut up. But anyway, that was the last auction that I did, and I got to meet all these people. They have all this stuff, and they give it to me. I treat it like it's my own, and I do the research, I do the work, and I try to maximize their money for it. And sometimes it will go to different institutions. We had a number of different institutions, museums and the like, schools and all that kind of thing that need things that we were able to come up with for our auctions. And then they if you're paying the kind of money at auction that a lot of this stuff goes for, if you're paying $585 for a bar of soap, you're going to remember that you have this thing, and it's going to be going somewhere where it's going to be preserved and protected. So that's the way I look at it. It's a very difficult proposition. You know, I'm a preservationist at heart. I don't like to see things change. I just heard about a particular house on East Main Street that could be in its demise, which was a family home. You know, we had a lot of family homes in Georgetown, so I can't, you know, say anything. But you know, it's you know, I hate to see things happen like that, but everything happens for a reason. Right now, we're working on the Hilltop Steakhouse, of all things. So it's to go from one thing to another, complete opposite. But you know, when you think about that institution, you know, I mean, how many people here have had a pretty good steak tip meal there in the past, you know? And here I'm going through there now. I never thought about the back. The place is 5 times what you would ever see in the front, unless you worked there. They had 800 waitresses when they were at their maximum. They had 800 waitresses working there, and they have locker rooms. They have, I mean, it's like a factory, like you can't imagine. They have a whole city underneath it and behind it, and the place is massive. It's 50,000 square feet. It's probably going to end up torn down. You know, they're going to tear it down. They got a price. I know how much it is to tear it down. We're going to sell anything that we can that's in there, and it's going to find a new life. You know, the people that are going to come there, they're going to be able to tell their own story with these things, which I don't think is a bad thing. You know, and that's the way I look at a lot of the things. Like people say, well, shouldn't this stuff go? What about the Kennedy family? Don't they? Well, Caroline sold $34 million worth of her own family stuff, so I don't want to really hear about Caroline and, you know what I mean? But these things find a new home and a new life and a new education. So whether it's in a public or a private format, I think that there's a learning tool. That's why I'm here right now. It's like if I can, you know, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I do know a little bit about a lot of things, and I have these things at my disposal, and I would have done a better job, you know, but I really thought that this meeting was on Saturday. I'm like, are you kidding? Somebody told me on Sunday. I said, no, it's on Saturday. I have a whole week to get ready for this. Well, I found out on Sunday, and I already had full days yesterday, the day before, and today. So I tried to do something as fast as I could. So it's not the greatest in the world, but enough of me talking. Why don't you come up and take a look around? If you have questions, I'll be happy to.
Well, see it all.
Yeah, just
Check out Dan's collection up here, and also our gift shop in the back. And I thank you all for coming tonight. And if you have questions, I'm sure Dan will answer. And I think we can all agree that Georgetown is very, very fortunate to have Dan. And all that his family has collected is you know, so many things that could have been forever lost, and they're all preserved with the meters. And we thank him, we thank his father before him for all this great collection, and thank you all for coming. If you're interested in joining the Georgetown Historical Society, please check us out on our website, www.georgetownhistoricalsociety.com. We have information about joining the society. You can download a membership form, or you can mail it in, or you can pay by PayPal. We really depend on our members to help support us to run the museum and offer great programs like this. So we hope you'll consider joining. Also hope you'll drop by the Brocklebank Museum at some time. It's open during the summer on Sundays. And if you're looking for a great Christmas present or a gift for somebody, we hope you will check out our gift shop. It is also online on our website, or you can contact us by email, info@georgetownhistoricalsociety.com, and to buy any of these great items. We have postcards, we have post blocks, and we have old maps, and a variety of books.
Very convenient.
So please check us out. Please join the society. Please drop by the museum and buy some of our merchandise too. So hope to see you on our membership list soon. Bye bye.